The truth no. Not the fairy tales wrapped in pretty little lies. Not the sugar-coated nonsense they feed you to keep you tame. I'm talking about the raw, unfiltered, blood-stained truth. The kind that burns when it touches your soul, the kind that makes your stomach churn, the kind that either breaks you or makes you invincible. People love to pretend. They walk around draped in illusion strong, untouchable, wise. But it's all an act, a brittle mask hiding the cracks beneath. And you don't have to expose them. You don't have to tear their illusions apart. Just ignore them. Just watch. Because silence is a mirror. And weak people, they can't stand what they see in it. That's the first rule of the game. You don't react. You don't give them the satisfaction. Let them talk, let them shout, let them throw their little stones. Just stand there. Just watch. Just ignore. And see what happens. At first, they'll act like it doesn't bother them, like your indifference is meaningless. But then you'll notice it. The cracks forming at the edges of their pride. The way their voices start to waver. The way their smiles twitch, forced and hollow. They thought they had power over you. They thought they could shake you, control you, pull you into their storm. But instead, they're the ones losing grip. Because the more you ignore, the more they reveal. You ever notice how the loudest ones, the ones who act like they're above it, are usually the most insecure? It's almost funny. They puff up their chest, raise their voices, act as if the world is theirs to command. But take away their audience, take away their validation, and suddenly they start to crack. They start to slip. Their words become desperate. Their insults turn shaky. They need a reaction, they crave it, because without it, they have nothing. And when you refuse to play their game, when you refuse to react, that's when the mask falls off. That's when you see them for what they really are. Weak, desperate, afraid. It's not just enemies. It's friends, lovers, family. Everyone shows their true face when you stop giving them what they want. The ones who truly care, they stay. The ones who don't, they break. Piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the truth they tried so hard to hide. You ever watch someone crumble just because you stopped caring? It's beautiful, poetic, because you were their fuel, their lifeline, the thing that gave them purpose. And when you took it away, when you stripped them of the validation they were feeding on, they collapsed. And you didn't even have to lift a damn finger. That's what you need to understand. People are weak, and the more you ignore them, the more they show you just how weak they really are. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to prove anything. Just stand still and watch. Watch how their confidence withers into doubt. Watch how their pride curdles into fear. Watch how every insult, every betrayal, every act of cruelty they threw at you comes back to haunt them. Because here's the thing about people who try to hurt you. They expect a reaction. They expect you to scream, to fight back, to break. It makes them feel powerful. But when you don't, when you just sit back and smile, that's when the real panic sets in. That's when they start falling apart. Because suddenly, they're staring into the abyss they thought they had thrown you into. And the abyss is staring back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day when they're alone, when the silence is deafening, when the weight of their own actions finally catches up to them, they'll remember. They'll remember every time they pushed you, every time they laughed, every time they thought they were winning, and it'll eat them alive. See, people think karma is some mystical force, some cosmic justice, but it's not. Karma is just the weight of their own actions finally crushing them, and trust mate always catches up. So don't waste your breath. Don't waste your time. Just sit back, watch, enjoy the show. Because the more you ignore them, the more they unravel. Every single time. People think they have you figured out. They think they know who you are, what you want, how you'll react. They study you like a specimen in a lab, waiting for the right moment to poke, to prod, to push. And the second you react, the second you let them see your emotions, they win. It's that simple. The game isn't about strength. It's not about intelligence. It's about control. And most people, they hand over control without even realizing it. Someone insults them, they fire back. Someone disrespects them, they lose their cool. Someone ignores them, they beg for attention, like puppets on strings dancing to a tune they didn't even write. But you're different. You're gonna break the rules. You're gonna stop playing their game. And that starts with silence. That starts with detachment. That starts with looking them dead in the eye and saying, you don't matter enough to deserve my energy. Because the truth is, the ones who try to tear you down, they're already beneath you. Think about it. When was the last time a truly powerful person wasted their breath on someone insignificant? When was the last time someone who had their life together spent their time throwing dirt on someone else? They don't. Because real power doesn't need to prove itself. Only the weak do. And that's why the more you ignore them, the more they unravel. They need a reaction to validate their existence. They need you to acknowledge them. Because without it, they're nothing. Just empty shells rattling around in their own misery. And when you refuse to play along, when you refuse to dance to their tune, that's when the panic sets in. That's when they start exposing their own fears, their own insecurities, their own weaknesses. They thought they were in control. They thought they could bait you, break you, manipulate you. But instead, they're the ones falling apart. And that's the secret. That's the trick. You don't fight them. You don't argue. You don't waste a single ounce of your strength on them. You just sit back and watch. Watch how their confidence crumbles into desperation. Watch how their pride disintegrates into doubt. Watch how every insult, every attack, every little mind game they played turns against them. Like a house of cards collapsing in slow motion. And the best part, you didn't even have to lift a finger. But don't mistake this for passivity. This isn't about letting people walk all over you. Number. This is about knowing when to strike and when to stay silent. You ever see a lion waste its energy chasing flies? Number. Because a lion knows what it is. A lion doesn't need to prove itself, and neither do you. That's what they don't understand. That's what they fear. Because weak people, they live for conflict. They need it. It's the only thing that makes them feel alive. But you don't need their approval. You don't need their validation. You don't need to prove a damn thing to anyone. And that terrifies them. Because the moment they realize they have no control over you, the moment they see that their words mean nothing, that's when they start to break. That's when they start questioning everything. And oh, it hurts them more than you'll ever know. The silence, the indifference, the refusal to engage, it eats away at them. Because people like that, they thrive on attention, they thrive on drama. Take that away, and what's left? Just a scared, insecure little child, throwing a tantrum, hoping someone will care enough to respond, but you won't. Because you're smarter than that, you're stronger than that, and that's where you win. Not with words, not with fists, but with cold, calculated silence. Let them talk, let them scream, let them throw their pathetic little punches. Because at the end of the day, you're untouchable. There is a truth it's a truth so simple, so effortless, that it slips through the cracks of the desperate and the weak. They spend their lives clawing, screaming, reaching for control, never realizing they never had it to begin with. Because power, real power, isn't about forcing your will upon others. It isn't about making the most noise or demanding the most attention. It's about silence. It's about stillness. It's about watching the world tear itself apart while you remain untouched, unmoved, untouchable. They've been running from something their entire lives, though they'd never admit it. They've built their entire existence around this chase, this illusion of dominance, of being the one who holds the strings. But they don't. They never did. They were never the ones in charge you were. They were nothing more than actors in a play they didn't even write. Puppets mistaking themselves for the puppeteers. And that's the joke, isn't it? That's the punchline they never see coming. Because you don't win by fighting. You don't win by throwing punches or raising your voice above theirs. No, the real victory is in doing nothing. It's in standing there, silent, while they unravel. Have you ever watched someone self-destruct in real time? It's fascinating. The way they scramble, the way their mask begins to slip the moment they realize they're not in control. The longer you remain silent, the more they reveal. The more they expose their weaknesses, their insecurities, their desperate need to be acknowledged. It's a law of nature, as predictable as gravity, take away their fuel, and they burn themselves out. But it gets better. Because when people are ignored, when their attempts at control are met with indifference, they don't just show weakness, they show their true selves. And that's when things become truly horrifying. See, most people, the ones who thrive on validation, on attention, on reaction, have spent their entire lives wearing a mask. The polite smiles, the friendly gestures, the sweet words, it's all just an act. A carefully crafted illusion designed to hide the rotting, desperate thing underneath. But when you take away the audience, when you refuse to feed into the performance, the mask cracks, the real face emerges. And trust me, you don't want to see what's underneath. It's ugly, it's pathetic, it's terrifying. Because the truth is, most people are hollow. They exist only through the reflections of others, defining themselves not by who they are, but by how they are perceived. They build their identities around the reactions they provoke, feeding off the energy of those they manipulate. But what happens when you take that away? What happens when the mirror shatters? They crumble. They fall apart. They claw at the walls of their own emptiness, desperate for anything, anyone, to remind them that they still exist. And that's when the tables turn. That's when they start chasing you. See, once you become the enigma, the mystery they can't solve, they lose their grip. People hate what they can't control. They despise what they can't predict, what they can't manipulate. And when they realize that their usual tricks, their usual mind games don't work on you, they panic. They try harder, they push further, they become reckless, they become desperate. They will test you, they will tempt you, they will throw everything they have at you in one last attempt to make you react, to make you play their game. But you won't. You'll remain still, cold, detached, and the more they struggle, the weaker they look. It doesn't come right away. No, that would be too easy. It comes later, when the dust has settled, when the game is over and they're left alone with nothing but the wreckage of their own choices. Maybe it's a week from now, maybe it's a year, but eventually it hits them. They remember every time they pushed you, every time they tried to break you, every time they convinced themselves they had won. And in that moment, nothing terrifies them more than realizing you don't even think about them anymore. That they spent all that time, all that energy, all that effort trying to break you, and in the end, they were the only ones who shattered. That's the funny part, isn't it? They thought they were winning. They thought they had power. But the moment you stop playing their game, the moment you refuse to engage, they lost everything. Because control, it was never in their hands. It was always in yours. They just didn't see it, and by the time they do, it's too late. You've moved on. You've outgrown them. And they're stuck there, trapped in their own misery, screaming at ghosts who don't even hear them anymore. Because that's what you become when you master this. A ghost, untouchable, unshakable. A force of nature that no insult, no betrayal, no petty little game can ever reach. You don't fight battles anymore. You don't waste your breath on people who aren't worth it. You just exist. Above them, beyond them, watching as they destroy themselves, powerless to stop it, powerless to pull themselves back from the edge they threw themselves over. And that's the ultimate revenge, isn't it? Not getting even, not striking back, just watching. Watching as time does the work for you, watching as their own choices drag them down deeper and deeper while you rise higher and higher, untouched, untouchable. And by the time they realize what they lost, what they did, what they threw away, you'll be too far ahead for them to ever reach you again. They tell themselves that they matter. Their words carry weight, that their presence leaves an imprint on the world. They craft illusions of power, spinning webs of control through manipulation, conflict, and attention-seeking. And for a while, they believe it. They believe they're strong, that they command respect, that they hold influence over others. But take that away, strip them of the illusion, deny them the reaction they so desperately crave and watch. They unravel. Because without the chaos, without the validation of being noticed, they are nothing. A hollow shell wrapped in arrogance, masking the truth they refuse to face. They need conflict like air in their lungs because it distracts them from the silence inside. If they are not hurting someone, if they are not playing their twisted games, then they are left alone with themselves. And that is the one thing they cannot bear. Because deep down, In the quiet hours of the night, when there is no audience, they know. They know what they are. Weak, pathetic, a fragile, crumbling structure built on lies they whispered to themselves for so long that they mistook them for truth. And when you refuse to play, when you do not engage, when you do not fight back, you force them to confront it. And it is ugly. You have never seen desperation like this before. It is not fury. It is not rage. It is fear pure, undiluted fear. Because suddenly, they are staring into the mirror with no mask, no pretense, no excuses, just them, and the crushing weight of their own insignificance. That's when it hits them. They were never strong, never powerful, never in control. Every insult, every calculated move, every manipulation was a frantic clawing at shadows, begging, pleading to be acknowledged. Because the moment they are ignored, they start to disappear. They suffocate in their own irrelevance. And you do not need to strike them down. You do not need to retaliate. You simply walk away. Not because you are weak, not because you are afraid, but because you have already won. Because real power is not in the noise, not in the shouting, not in the grand displays of dominance. It is in silence, in stillness, in the quiet moments where you choose not to engage, where you watch them crumble under the weight of their own delusions, their own fragility. And the worst part for them, it was inevitable. They were always going to destroy themselves.